Talk about.
Let's talk
I am gonna make this
Talk.
movies. Spoiler. Upside down airplane wing. Spoiler. Aerodynamic phalange used to create downforce in fast-moving vehicles. Spoiler. Hello YouTube, my name's Declan and let's talk about Cloud Atlas. Look at me! I've got like a studio, editing and stuff. The way I want this show to work, this show, as I've mentioned previously, I want it to be a discussion show as opposed to a critique show, which it turns out is very difficult. Discussion is important to do with movies because, as proved by things like extra credits in the thing, it's important to be educated about the arts. Because the more educated you can be about the arts, the more you can tell what is a good movie and what is a bad movie by yourself, rather than needing to be told. And good movies, which are kind of trying new things, pushing the envelope, should then get more interest, and that's what we want, because we want the art to develop all the time. If it doesn't, it stagnates, and we get 4 Transformer movies that we didn't need in the first place. See, I'm starting to critic things. I didn't want to critic things. What I'm going to try to do is keep these episodes relatively short, because the internet has a short attention span. At any point in the future, this gets a following. I want you people to record videos, and then I will include some of my choices of those videos at the end of the video. How is that going to work, you ask? Well, I'm going to tell you in advance the movie that I have watched and will be writing for the following week. Post them to me in response to the previous video in the series, and I'll go through them and put them in the new video. Okay, let's do this. The thing I want to talk about, which has been a big problem with this movie when it came out, was the fact that people thought that yellow-facing up some of the actors for the new Korean part of the film was considered racist. That doesn't really make sense to me. To anyone watching this movie, I think it's obvious that the director used the yellow face, for want of a better word, to continue the idea that love and relationships and people and lives can transcend lives, human finite lives, and claim that that's racist. The idea that love is everlasting, there's something wrong with you. In this film, men play women, young play old, but none of these actor choices are in any way sexist, ageist, or indeed racist. They're trying to create, with film and makeup techniques, what the book created using literary and metaphorical techniques. Technically, you could argue that the idea that love created between white people in the past has some sort of influence on Koreans in the future, in and of itself is racist. When you think about it, it all kind of sounds quite silly. On top of that, the makeup is in no way convincing. I don't mean that the makeup artists are in any way bad at their job. I think that was the idea. It wasn't supposed to be technically convincing because, as I said, the director is trying to make a point. They're trying to do with the makeup what the little birthmark does in the book. I think it would be far worse if you didn't get the job because of the fact that you were Asian or black or short or tall or whatever, than not getting the female Korean or whatever role, even though you are.
It's gonna be a war, man. I can see it. There's gonna be a war between the blacks and between the whites.
To the Lannister, he knows his shit. How did we not realize that he was a good actor after that movie? When you think about it, Cloud Atlas could technically be considered an awful lot of movies in one. What I think is interesting is that the director uses cuts, like this one, to do things far more important than me just looking cool on the internet. When you're watching a regular film from a specific genre, the cuts are often used to create the suspense curve. Question up for discussion: is it a good thing that an awful lot of movie types are in one thing? Think about it, having genres in a way paralyzes creativity. How? If director or a writer or a screenplay writer or whatever, the cinematographer concept in wherever he or she is making a film, if they're capable of holding the ideas and tropes of several genres at the same time, they can do an awful lot more and get a much broader message across. On the other hand, genres are very helpful. In being able to choose a genre, you can narrow down the message that you're trying to get across. If you only have to consider the tropes of, say, a sci-fi movie without having to consider the tropes of, say, a romantic movie, you don't have to deal with all the character development necessary for the romantic part of the film. All you have to do is do the sci-fi part of the movie. Back to the Future technically discusses the idea of cause and effect. In not needing to develop any kind of romantic relationships, it has more time to explain the mechanics of time travel. A film like Pride and Prejudice doesn't need to spend any time explaining the mechanics of anything. It just has to do a little bit of period explanation, and then it can dive straight into the relationships that are developed throughout the narrative. So if you get to the point where all movies are all genres at the same time, you end up with this bland overexposure to sameness, where the director has no time to deal with any of the thing particularly well, so all things get dealt with poorly. I'm going to start off this bit by listing who I think the Tom Hanks part of the relationship is in each of the stories, and who the Halle Berry part of the relationship is in each of these two stories. I use those two actors because they're the people who most often play the two parts of the relationship. Tom Hanks is the explorer, the scientist, the doctor, student, publisher, the clone, barbarian. Halle Berry is the slave that stows away on the ship, the reporter, musician, his long lost love, the freedom fighter, scientist. The reason that I think all of these couples are all of these couples is because of what these couples say about the idea of love and how it transcends lives. In the first relationship, we find that love can exist in a completely non-platonic way, and love can be independent of platonic or physical attraction. In the doctor-musician relationship, we find that love can exist between people. Physical love can exist between two people of the same gender. We find that love can exist between people who are completely different in terms of creativity, and love can easily exist between an extrovert and an introvert. In the scientist reporter story, we can see that love can be instantaneous. In the publisher long lost love storyline, we can see that even if love does happen instantaneously, it can exist forever. In the clone freedom fighter relationship, I think it's important to note that the clone has absolutely no idea what happens anywhere ever. That love is an innate object. Barbarian scientist storyline, we see that love transcends intelligence and culture and society and everything. That is one of the main points of the entire film, is that love can transcend anything. But what's far more important is that the idea of the soul transcends everything, transcends death, transcends life, transcends literally everything, and almost exists in its own plane. The idea of the soul for me in this movie is completely separate to the idea of the being or the self. What do I mean by its own plane? I'm not really sure. Only that it's separate to everything. But I think that the most important part of the film is the line read out, or the line spoken by the clone towards the end of the film. Alright, that ends our first ever episode of Let's Talk About Movies. First things first, please respond. I love people who love to talk. I think everyone loves people who love to talk. Particularly love people who like talking about movies. Next week we'll be talking about Oz the Great and Powerful. Start making your videos immediately. Or at least just talk about it. Until next week, I hope you talk to someone about something.